Hi there, this is Paul from 4DW. Today I'm going to take you for a walk around how my studio, mixing desk, Xone 4D, aka APC40, Ableton controller and Ableton are all configured together, how I got there and why I got there. So I'm going to start off by just pointing out some parts of how Ableton itself is configured. My plan was that I needed to be able to mix both traditional style track deck 1 and 2 mixing in the same way as you would in Traktor or with CDJs. I wanted to be able to use the full breadth of the clip launch of the APC40 and Ableton itself, but I wanted to break out from a more established piece into some of my own work or a track that had been cut up and pre-processed a lot more than just a standard play. So my plan was to make a fairly simple set control that allowed me to have a bit of flexibility on both. So the way this is configured on the Xone 4D, which if you don't know about the Xone 4D, it's basically a 4-channel mixing desk which has EQ, inbuilt VCA faders, high pass, low pass and band pass, and then on either side a whole bunch of MIDI controllers, buttons, sliders, all that kind of stuff. I'll talk more about how all of that is mapped in the next part of the video. But in principle, everything I'm talking about here you could apply to any 4-channel mixing desk and any MIDI controller. The one thing I have discovered from using the APC40 in anger, although the APC40 is very flexible, I can move this various clip selections backwards and forwards, it actually can't do everything, so you do need, in my opinion, a secondary MIDI controller to map some performance items to, just so that you've got double hands-on control on certain things. And I also found that being able to use audio 1 and 2 live on the mixing desks means you can do crossfades at a harmonic or frequency level by using the EQ on the desk, which with the standard configuration of the APC40 you can't do, because although you could have an EQ3 on a channel, because of the way the APC40 works you can't simultaneously crossfade the lows from 2 channels, because by selecting one of the channels you immediately select the other when you change, so you don't have 2 hand-on control at the same time. So I get around that by using the analogs within the mixing desk, and I suspect quite a few people will do that, or map some alternative controls to a second controller. So walking across the set, on audio 1 and audio 2, which are basically the same, I've got this pre-set up performance rack which is mapped onto the APC40, which we'll talk about in another session, and I then have this deck master preset which I've built, which basically is a small amount of compression and limiting, and that's just in case for some reason I up the gain on a track, or I just have a bit of a moment of chaos in the audio channel. You don't want feedback, you don't want oversaturation of sounds unless you plan to oversaturate the sound, so I always find on all the master outs I'd like to have a little bit of compression and limiting just in case things go a little bit awry. I've got exactly the same thing configured on audio 1 and 2. So audio 1, as you can see, external outs direct to the mixing desk to channel 1 and 2, which is fader 1 on the Xone, and then 3 and 4 is fader 2 on the Xone. The next 8 tracks are all configured as master out in Ableton, and master out is mapped to 1 and 2. So this means on fader 1 on the Xone desk I've got both audio 1 and all of the Ableton output. So it does mean you just need to be a little bit careful if you want to use audio 1 and the stuff which is mapped to master. But again, on the master I've got levels and compression on that, and it's all kind of taken care of, so at least it won't go over loud or out of control. The track called Resample is exactly what it says. It's for resampling in the playing audio from within Ableton itself, so that you can make a new quick clip on the fly. This is useful if you want to use scene insert or quick capture. It tends to get used a lot more when I'm preparing sets and prepping stuff up than actually live, where things are a little bit hectic. It's just useful if you get a particularly good bit of sequence that you play while you're jamming. You think, oh, it's kind of hard to play live, I'll just capture that. I do think on a lot of the YouTube videos of people using APC40s live, they're great for 9-8 minutes of really hands-on stuff, but if you were trying to do that in a club in the dark, I think it's going to be really hard to constantly have the same level of frenetic activity on the APC40 as in some of these YouTube videos that you see, without things just easily going astray. I mean, I know Dead Mouse does it, but man, he's like a genius at this kind of stuff, and he's got loads and loads of gear. So unless we're all of the Dead Mouse talent club, I think you need to figure out how to drop down and just make some bits of your set a little bit easier rather than overly exciting, so you can focus on the crowd as opposed to focusing on the mixing desk. Booth in is taking an external in straight from the back of the sound card, and this just allows me to record the set for later resampling or just for playback if I want to listen to how the set went. The reason why I have to take the audio in as a feed from the mixing desk as opposed to just recording the Ableton set live is on the mixing desk there's analog features which are outside of what Ableton knows about, and I also have a Chaos Pad 3 which is connected as part of the send and return on the mixing desk, so those external analog effects need to be captured separately. I sometimes, rather than using a software capture, I capture to a hardware digital disc recorder or an SD recorder, just plug straight in the back of the sound card and then just import it as a WAV at a later date. I've then got the three ABC sends which are mapped to the APC40. One's a verb delay, so it's, as you can see, it's a bit of a delay and a hall reverb, and this is straight from the performance set of audio effects that ship with Ableton with a little bit of a tweak. Delay is a gated ping pong, not too much feedback, and again it's mapped to use the APC40. FX channel, I haven't put any effects on the default set that I'm showing you at the moment, but you prop in phasers, flanges, ohm force, fromage, glitching, whatever you feel like here, and switch the devices on and off. And then the FX mixer, I'll talk about more in detail when we talk about the MIDI setup. But basically, I have a bunch of pre-set up rescue effects and repeated effects, and just so that I can control the volumes of all of those, they're all bussed out to send effects. So this FX box number 4 again has the same master channel out style compression and limiting, and you'll also notice that this goes to channel 5 and 6 on the mixing desk, which is fader 3, so I've got separate effects levels control, which just means if, as you saw, there are some sweeps and some drum rolls and some other bits and pieces in there which you can use to add emphasis to coming out of breakdowns, you've got separate levels control them if you just happen to get your timing a little bit off track. So just to recap, pretty much 1 and 2 are set as if they were traditional CD decks. 3 to 10 is mastered out in Ableton and goes to channel 1. Resample allows me to resample. Silence clip is the usual Ableton trick of having a 1 bar recording of nothing, which, although it sounds insane, is really useful because if you want to do a scene launch with follow-on actions down to a different level, sometimes you don't want every scene to start at the same time. You may want, for example, to start with a sweep and a drum roll and then drop in the next phase of instrumentation. Well, you can use the silence and follow-on actions as a loop, as a trigger, to allow you to start something on step 2 or step 3 and keep everything triggered. Again, you can fire them all off by hand by using the buttons on the APC40, but sometimes it's just useful when you're coming out of a complex transition of EQ fades, level fades, muting, to just be able to fire off the whole scene in one go and get yourself nice and tidied up and rescued, so you're back onto the flow and the groove of your set. So that's my thinking so far. I'll show you a few tricks I've done on the remapping of the APC40 and the use of the Xone in the next video. Hope to see you there. This is Paul from 4DW.